From her early days singing folk songs to her bumpy marriage to James Taylor, Carly Simon's life and career has faced many challenges. Here's how the You're So Vain singer managed to survive the bad times while continuing to inspire her fans. Chances are you've seen the Simon surname in connection to Carly Simon's family on the inside of a book. Her father, Richard Simon, was the co-founder of Simon & Schuster, one of the most prominent publishing houses in America. Richard and M. Lincoln Schuster formed the company in 1924 and had early successes with America's first crossword puzzle books and paperback lines. It's grown, diversified, and been passed among corporate owners since 1975 and currently acts as a major publisher of fiction and nonfiction. Unfortunately, professional success did not translate into a happy home life. In Carly's memoir, Boys in the Trees, she describes how her father became lonely and depressed. His wife carried on an affair with a much younger man, and bad habits badly affected his health. Even his business fortunes turned sour when Schuster and other supposed friends forced him out of the company. Richard Simon died when Carly was 15 in July 1960. Had you met Carly Simon at age 8, she may not have seemed a likely candidate for fame and fortune through show business. At around that age, she developed a stammer. It was first apparent during a rehearsal for a production of Little Women Simon and her sisters were appearing in. Simon wrote in her memoir, Boys in the Trees, that it was initially taken as a temporary setback, one her sisters were decidedly unsympathetic towards, but the stammer wouldn't go away. Simon's mother was understanding, and the experience of trying to fight the stammer brought mother and daughter closer together. But Simon's stammer followed no definite pattern, and any progress was slow and inconsistent. Psychiatric care was unsuccessful. Simon took to inventing words in her diary to describe her condition and to using various word swaps and facial turns to compensate when in conversation. A breakthrough came during a particularly difficult episode when Simon struggled to request the butter be passed down during dinner. Her mother suggested that she sing the question instead of speaking it.
She would just say, "Darling, just sing it."
While not a cure-all, it became an effective technique for Simon to navigate language, and it suggested that she could pursue singing as a career. Carly Simon comes from a musical family. Her father was an enthusiastic pianist who enjoyed playing classical music away from his publishing work. In her memoir, Boys in the Trees, Carly Simon says that music went from a pleasure to a release in her father's life. As his health and happiness deteriorated, the music of Beethoven was a way to get out his frustrations. If Richard Simon turned to music as an escape, his 3 daughters made it into a profession. Carly, of course, has made her name as a singer in pop, rock, and folk music. Her oldest sister, Joanna Simon, went into opera. Her NBC News obituary noted her frequent appearances on the stage, concerts, and TV as a mezzo-soprano, and after retiring as a singer, she kept a hand in the arts as a journalist for PBS. The middle sister, Lucy Simon, began as a folk singer alongside Carly before taking a break to raise her children and study nursing. She would return to music as a songwriter and a composer. Her Broadway show, The Secret Garden, was nominated for 6 Tony Awards in 1991. Carly Simon spent some time in Sarah Lawrence College in the 1960s, but her time in college was short-lived. At the same time she was meant to be studying and attending classes, she and her older sister Lucy Simon came together as a singing duo. Their appearance on the TV show Hootenanny brought Carly a fresh wave of popularity on campus, according to her memoir Boys in the Trees, and Lucy was eager to keep pursuing music as a career. Carly took a leave of absence from college to join her that ultimately became permanent. Billed as the Simon Sisters, Carly and Lucy's repertoire was primarily filled with popular folk songs. They signed with Cap to produce a handful of records. One of them featured the Simon Sisters' original song, Winkin', Blinkin' and Nod. It became a minor hit in 1964 and the first brush of fame for the siblings. Their time as a duo came to an end when Lucy married, but she would join Carly under the Simon Sisters' name for one more record in 1969. The Simon Sisters sing the Lobster Quadrille and other songs for children. It was a collection of famous children's poems set to Lucy's music. After a brief stint as a duo act with her sister Lucy Simon, Carly Simon set out on a solo career as a singer-songwriter in 1970. In a profile by Tidal, she explained a roadblock to making it on her own. Music producers liked her work, but didn't get the sense of her as a performer.
I was quite disheartened. I thought my songs were really good.
She was turned down by some of the biggest names in the music business before being signed to Elektra Records. Carly Simon's self-titled first album Under Elektra was released in February 1971. Tidal credited it with marking the rise of the singer-songwriter, a movement Carly compared with the auteur theory of filmmaking, and it was part of a trend of female artists speaking to their sex. The biggest hit off her album was the critique of traditional marriage, That's the Way I've Always Heard It Should Be, co-written by Carly and journalist Jacob Brackman. Brackman had never written lyrics before, but he and Carly were close friends, and she was struggling to find words to match her music. The two found they had a professional chemistry, and they've been regular collaborators since. Carly wrote in Boys in the Trees that the two have always kept things platonic, sensing that romance would spoil their friendship and creative partnership. One of Carly Simon's biggest hits is 1972's You're So Vain, a cutting musical portrait of a male lover overloaded with personal admiration. Ever since the song's release, it's fueled speculation on just who Simon could have been talking about. And for just as long, she's been coy about the answer. She anticipated being asked the question when speaking to the Washington Post in 1983, and would only confirm that the song wasn't about Mick Jagger. She did tell the Post that Warren Beatty thought the song was about him, and 32 years later, she confirmed to People that he was right, in part. In the same interview, Simon said that You're So Vain was inspired by 3 men, and that Beatty is described in the second verse. She declined to name the other 2, at least until they knew themselves that they were part of the song, and even in that event, Simon was non-committal about divulging any more. She did play a 4th verse, not included in the original release, for the BBC in 2017, but no new names were named. The one person besides Simon with a claim to know who You're So Vain is about in full is former NBC Sports chairman Dick Ebersol, who won the knowledge with a $50,000 bid in a celebrity charity auction. Ebersol swore himself to secrecy once he learned the truth. While celebrated as a talented songwriter in her own right, one of the most successful tunes of Carly Simon's career is one in which she was the performer only. In 1977, she recorded Nobody Does It Better, written by Marvin Hamlish and Carol Bayer Sager as the theme song to the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. In a contemporary documentary on the making of the film, Hamlish said that, contrary to past Bond themes, he wanted the song to be about 007 himself, a tribute to his own vanity and arrogance. The lyrics by Sager were so complimentary to Bond that she and Hamlish thought of You're So Vain and Carly Simon, prompting them to offer it to her. Nobody Does It Better has become so associated with its performer that Rolling Stone claimed many people don't realize it's from a James Bond film in their ranking of the series' theme songs. Nobody Does It Better came in at number 6 for them. Billboard put it at number 2. And ahead of the most recent entry in the series, No Time to Die, USA Today named Nobody Does It Better the best of the Bond themes. From 1972 to 1983, Carly Simon was married to singer-songwriter James Taylor. The Los Angeles Times described Simon's memoir, Boys in the Trees, as covering a large part of their relationship, and she has frequently spoken about their time together. She's also volunteered about the state of affairs she and Taylor find themselves in today, or lack thereof. Simon and Taylor first met when she was 11 and he was a teenager, and at the time, they were no more than passing acquaintances playing in Martha's Vineyard. They became a couple in the 1970s when they were both rising stars. Simon claims to have known they would marry even before meeting again when she saw him on the cover of Time magazine, and that their first night together, Taylor preferred lying together to sex. They built a home in Martha's Vineyard and had 2 children together. But the pressures of 2 successful singer-songwriter careers, affairs on both sides, and Taylor's drug use took a toll on their marriage. The couple divorced in 1983. Taylor has not spoken to her since their split, for reasons she does not understand, but she told People that she remains deeply in love with him.
Well, that period of time was very challenging because I was really swept up in the sadness and the brokenness.
In recent years, Carly Simon has become known for her writing as well as her musicianship. Her earliest works as an author were children's books, many of them derived from stories she made up to tell her own children. Another, The Fisherman's Song, was adapted from one of her own tunes. Simon wrote 5 such books between 1989 and 1997. In the same period, she released a recording of her reading 3 of the stories to her own music, and later released a musical interpretation of Mother Goose rhymes in 2000. Simon achieved greater critical notice for her 2015 memoir, Boys in the Trees. Initial press buzz focused on whether or not the book would reveal the identity of You're So Vain's subject. But once the book was out, reviewers were struck by Simon's wit and complexity. The Guardian's reviewer was surprised by the book's often melancholy tone compared with the reputation of Simon's music, but considered it an excellent piece of self-reflection. In 2019, Simon followed Boys in the Trees with a second memoir, Touched by the Sun. Per her official website, it's about Simon's chance encounter and long friendship with Jackie Kennedy Onassis. The year 2022 was a heavy year for the Simon family. On October 19th, opera star and journalist Joanna Simon died. One day later, her Tony-nominated sister, Lucy Simon, passed away. Joanna died of thyroid cancer, Lucy of breast cancer. Their younger brother, Peter Simon, had predeceased them in 2018. He too succumbed to cancer of the lungs. As the only surviving Simon sibling, Carly put out a statement mourning her sisters, which read in part, "We not only took turns blazing trails and marking courses for one another, we were each other's secret shares. I have no words to explain the feeling of suddenly being the only remaining direct offspring of Richard and Andrea Simon." Carly Simon has had her own battles with cancer over the years. She had a lump in her breast that doctors spent years assuring her only needed monitoring. Carly was happy to follow their lead. She didn't like the thought of surgery. But in 1997, one doctor was finally concerned enough to have it removed and found that it was cancerous. While it hadn't spread to her lymph nodes, Carly underwent a mastectomy. She hasn't had a recurrence of cancer since.